England was a nation of traders, utterly dependent on the wealth generated by her huge merchant fleet. A fleet which, unless it was properly protected, was terribly vulnerable to enemy attack. On the 30th of May 1693, 400 merchant ships gathered in a huge fleet and set out from England to the town of Smyrna in the eastern Mediterranean. This giant trade flotilla was described as the richest that ever went for Turkey. On board was a year's worth of trade: wool, tin, spices and silver, the lifeblood of the economy, which had been accumulating in port for fear of being captured or destroyed at sea. The convoy was such a vital national interest that it was given an escort of 102 warships. The convoy moved down the Channel and out into the Atlantic. But this route took them past Brest, home of the French Navy, which is where the accompanying English admirals were expecting trouble. So as they passed without incident and entered the Bay of Biscay, the English escort ships turned round and headed home, thinking the convoy would be safe. This was a disastrous decision. The French had found out about the convoy and the time of its departure, and they were preparing ships further down here to intercept it. As the convoy reached Lagos Bay on the southern tip of Portugal, they found 93 French warships waiting for them. Almost 100 merchant vessels carrying a year's worth of trade were captured or destroyed. When news of the disaster reached England, it sent the business community into a paroxysm of despair. From his house here in Rye, the merchant Samuel Jeek wrote in his diary, "News of the miscarriage of the Turkey fleet has put a great stop to trade." And this was an understatement. The losses suffered by the Smyrna convoy were as bad as those in the Great Fire of London of 1666. And there followed a wave of bankruptcies among insurers and merchants. The secretary to King William III said that he had never seen His Majesty so sensibly affected with any accident as this. This commercial disaster, coming just 3 years after one of the Navy's worst military disasters, served as a brutal reminder. For England, a powerful navy was not a luxury, it was a central pillar of state. Without it, the country was doomed. William desperately needed more ships, and to build them, money. But the treasury was empty. Then in 1694, a completely new kind of financial institution was created in London, one offering a unique investment opportunity. Anyone willing to put in at least £25 would receive a guaranteed return of 8%. The savvy merchant from Rye, Samuel Jeek, thought this sounded like a chance that was too good to miss, and he instructed his agent in London to invest £200. But then he decided to gather together all his spare cash and head into London himself. He wrote in his diary, "I made myself ready for my journey, carrying the £100 with me, and at 7 p.m. I took horse for London." Now that was a 15-hour ride, so it's fair to suggest that by the time he met up with his agent the following afternoon in the city, Mr. Jeek would have been quite saddle-sore. So keen was Jeek to take advantage of the 8% interest being offered that he even scraped together a further £200 while he was here in London, to take his total stake up to £500. £500 is a lot of money for anyone, even Jeek. But it turns out it was a pretty good investment. That exciting new financial institution that launched in 1694 still exists. It's called the Bank of England. The funds required to build a new navy were vast, but the Bank of England delivered. In just 12 days, it raised £1.2 million, and on August the 1st, 1694, it made its first loan to the government. The national debt was born, and the Royal Navy was saved. England would build now and pay later. This is a list of all the original investors in the Bank of England, known as subscribers at the time. At the top of each page here is the date and their names neatly written out here with their occupations next to them. Right here at the bottom of this page is Samuel Jeake of Rye in Sussex, a merchant. This is a remarkable document because it allows us to get a kind of investor profile of this extraordinary new venture. At the very top of the list, appropriately enough, are their Majesties, the King and Queen, who invested £10,000. But there's lots of other people from the very pinnacle of society as well. Men like Edward Russell, the First Lord of the Admiralty, invested £2,000. But it wasn't just the bigwigs that subscribed. There are 9 people listed here as being in domestic service. And here I've found Thomas Day of London, who's a blacksmith. He's invested £100, while over the page, Joseph Cake is a bricklayer. The national debt created a virtuous circle of funding. The government borrowed money from the people, which it spent on the navy, which protected trade, which brought in taxes, which allowed the government to pay the people back. It was a financial revolution, which uniquely would allow England to spend its way to greatness. More than half of that first loan, over £600,000, went on building up the navy, and that huge injection of cash, the first of many, had a transforming effect on whole areas of the economy all over the country. The northeast of England soon had Europe's largest ironworks, thanks to the navy's spending spree and one enterprising industrialist called Ambrose Crowley.